Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond
Can I get an amen?
and Larry Correia.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Today's episode, Religion.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. Glad to have you all with us today. Larry, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, Steve.
Good.
We're going to tackle one of the three forbidden topics of polite conversation.
As we know, there are three forbidden topics. There is politics, religion, and pizza toppings. No, sex is the other one. But pizza toppings is like 3B. But today, the one we're going to be tackling, Larry, religion.
Yeah, and then we could probably do a politics episode, but like writing that, but like writing sex, that is not my wheelhouse.
That'd be a really, no pun intended, short episode.
Dude, that is not something I am good at. We would need to bring on a special guest star to tackle that one.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And the whole episode just be like, well, just talk. We're just going to sit here.
Yeah, man's got to know his limitations. And guys, you'll notice I don't have a lot of sex stuff in my books because I'm not good at writing that. And it's really awkward for everyone. And then my wife would read it and probably laugh at me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so religion. Religion is interesting, right? There's a few different ways when it comes to religion that we mean it when we're talking about writing.
Yeah.
There's the aspect of bringing either our personal views on religion into the fiction, the real world religions into your fiction.
So like if you're writing urban fantasy or a detective story or a thriller or horror, modern times, and you want to bring in religious, religious subjects, religious characters, that kind of thing.
And then the other one, obviously, is writing secondary world fantasy or whatever.
Yeah, religious world building.
Yep, and it's the religious world building of it. Now, these are two radically different,
totally different
topics.
Things. And sometimes we could do like we did in Service of War and kind of cross the streams.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
And borrow heavily from real religion and put it in a fantasy world.
I think so. So we're going to talk about all that. So first order of business. Let's talk about the pluses and minuses in contemporary fiction, which we've both written, to bring religion, our real world religions, into our contemporary fiction.
Now, on the pro side, the way I look at it is a fundamental part of human reality for a lot of people.
A huge number of people.
Yeah. And now here's one of those, this is one of those topics that just by talking about this, I'm going to offend somebody. Someone out there is going to get butthurt about this. Anytime I talk about anything that I ever bring up the fact I'm religious at all on the internet, there's going to be somebody out there who's offended just because they have a chip on their shoulder about religion. Hey, for this episode, guys, just deal with it because we're talking about writing it.
Yeah.
And if you got a chip on your shoulder about religion, we'll talk about writing that too. Because we got some examples of people really mess with that. But I think if you're writing realistic human beings and you're writing about the world we live in today and some of your characters are religious, then you need to be able to tackle that. There's a lot of type stories where religion is going to play a pivotal part of it, either from the characters or just like if you're writing a story about fighting Muslim terrorists, you would kind of need to at least get the details of that right, wouldn't you? I mean, just even in your thrillers. So whatever it may be, if you're writing about, IRA and not to pick on the Islam, I'm saying, but if you want to write about the IRA and the troubles, then you're going to have the little elements of Catholics versus Protestants. If you want to write about the Old West and Mormons getting their butts kicked and chased, and until Porter Rockwell comes along and shoots everybody, you kind of want to have to get that stuff right.
Well, or I mean, for a long time, one of the biggest elements in the thriller genre was the religious thrillers, that your Dan Browns, your Steve Barrys, things like that.
Totally.
You have. Now, I'm not saying that they had a fundamental understanding.
No,
of
they were
religion.
awful.
They were super bad.
Yeah.
However,
well, I hadn't read the other guy, but Dan Brown. Oh my gosh,
it was just as bad. The fact that that people could read those who were either religious, who weren't, and could get enjoyment out of them is impressive.
Yeah,
because that goes to prove that the idea that you shouldn't put religion in your books. Well, Dan Brown put religion in his book
and did really well,
and did super, super well.
Which still baffles me, having read the first one, where I was just like, "What?" But what I saw though, those books pissed off two kinds of people: devout Catholics, and art history majors.
Yeah,
My wife is an art history major. Okay,
Yeah.
so she got her degree in art history.
A religion unto itself.
Yeah, it was well, and but a lot of religious iconography, and so you have to know all that stuff.
Tons.
And so my wife, I remember her reading this book. This is before I read it, and she just is the only time in my life I've seen my wife do a wall banger, where she literally threw the book and it banged against the wall because she was so angry.
Yeah, I've only done that once.
She got a degree in art history, and she just starts going off, and she's like, "This is wrong, and this is wrong, and that's not there, and that wasn't there, and that was 300 years later, and that wasn't even the right artist, and what the hell was this, and this is not where that goes," and she just went off, right? She was so angry. She's like, "How the hell did this guy sell 50 million copies of this?" I'm like, "Honey, I don't know."
Water cooler. So what it is, I think what this goes to is, one, he distilled the two very same subjects down into a manner in which it was easy for the mass populace to consume and feel vaguely interested in religion and art.
We talked about that once on the show before about the Michael Crichton factor.
Yeah.
Because Michael Crichton was the master of taking a science principle and distilling it down in a bite-sized chunk that the audience could read it and then feel like they were smart.
Yeah.
So you would read a Michael Crichton novel and be like, "Wow, I know all about DNA now."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Coincidentally enough, the one wall banger that I have is a Michael Crichton novel.
There you go. See, I actually like them all.
It was Sphere.
Oh, the ending of Spirit was
ending.
the worst thing
Because
ever
up
written.
until that point, really good.
Good.
It's actually horror. It's actually
a
a horror
good
novel.
book until the last like 20 pages.
Yeah, it's actually a horror novel. To
So
be fair.
spoiler alert, those of you that haven't read Sphere, it's got the stupidest ending of any book
Super
ever.
dumb.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways,
Yeah.
now on the getting contemporary religious stuff, writing it, the key is you got to do your research. And when I say research, I don't just mean like you read Wikipedia and Wikipedia said, "Well, the Pentecostals believe this, 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 and this." You know, because that's kind of a checked out, far away version of it. If you're talking about how religion affects people and how people behave and how people that like the culture of it, that's what you got to nail. Because most books you're not going to get into like the esoteric dogma of they believe this, 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 and this, right?
No.
But how many books have we seen where it's about some religious group and it's just crap because they just totally didn't get it right?
So everyone knows, and if for some reason you've made it this far into listening to the Writer Dojo, and you haven't understood this about me yet, it turns out I really like horror novels.
Yeah, drink.
Yeah. So one of my biggest beefs with horror novels, and I also have the same, it's a related but kind of sort of separate beef that I have with science fiction, is in horror specifically, religion almost always plays a large part because you're dealing with the idea of good forces and evil forces.
Good versus evil, supernatural stuff,
The literal devil,
the world beyond
Yeah.
our world. Yeah.
evil spirits, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Very common
Okay.
tropes in horror.
However, it's almost a cliche and a trope at this point within the horror genre that if there's a religious person in there, that's the bad guy.
Yeah. Okay. Stephen King.
Stephen King.
Stephen King is the most ham-fisted, overrated. I mean, he's a good wordsmith when he's on. He was better when he did cocaine. I'll put it that way. He's. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for this episode, but Stephen King, I don't know if he's ever actually met a religious human. I mean, I really don't. I mean, because the way he writes religious people is like you might as well be writing about space aliens.
Yeah.
Either that or he's got such a chip on his shoulder. That's the other thing you got to watch out for, guys, is your personal chip on your shoulder. Because that chip on your shoulder where you just hate some group of people so viscerally that you can't portray them as believable humans, that comes through in your writing. And now you'll get away with that if you have a big enough audience of people who also don't care about that group. But if for anybody who's tangentially familiar with that group, they don't have to be part of that group. They just have to be tangentially familiar with the culture of those people to go, "Oh, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Come on. Get over yourself."
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so the alcoholic school teacher pseudo-hero, it's always an alcoholic school teacher from Maine,
Or ex-writer.
or ex-writer, struggling writer, whatever it may be, writer blocked writer.
Yeah.
So tragic.
Yep.
But whatever the religious person in the story is either a dupe, a moron, or evil. Or
Yeah.
secretly evil, like wolf in sheep's clothing kind of
Very
secretly
much.
evil.
Very much.
And the thing is, okay, can you have characters like that? Sure you can.
Yeah, I and to be clear, I'm not saying that we should never ever have, say, a religious character who turns out to be a wolf in sheep's
Oh
clothing.
no, absolutely, because that happens.
That happens
It
a
happens
lot.
all the time. But if you're going to have where you simply can't portray a group of people as actual humans, you need to back up and check your preconceived notions about those people. Because here's a kicker: I've written convincing liberals. I've written convincing communists, okay, where I was actually fair to the communists, and that's saying, if you know me, that's saying something. Okay? So we're getting into that's politics and religion for me, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, you got to check your chip on your shoulder. So if you've got a whole bunch of personal baggage to the point where if you write about a group of people, you can only portray them in a horrible way, in anything else in life, that'd be referred to as bigotry.
Yeah.
If you were talking about if you were doing this with racial groups, it would be racism. If you wrote about all women this way, you'd be a misogynist or a misandrist. If you hate men, whatever it may be,
That doesn't exist.
yeah, whatever. Obviously now, but whatever it be, you'd be a bigot, and people wouldn't tolerate that. But if you do that for religious groups, then it's okay, and you're a free thinking, brave. You're so brave, and let's all clap.
Now, the one thing I want to be that I want to clarify here is it's okay if your character within the story
Absolutely.
has that attitude towards a specific group,
No, that actually makes perfect sense.
as long as not every character within the story has the same because then that's just the author at that point.
Yeah, that's just author insert. Now, if you have where your point of view character, and here's a kicker too, because if once again though, this is where you get into the whole social justice thing, people telling all people how to write.
Right.
If you had a character in a book who was your main character, and he just was super racist against, let's say he hates the Portuguese. Okay, he hates my people. He hates linguiça. He hates dairy cows.
Whoa. No one hates linguiça.
All right, whatever.
Blasphemy.
This guy's mad, right?
Speaking of religion, blasphemy.
Like he had a really bad experience in the Azores once. I don't know what it is. This dude hates the Portuguese. So I'm just using this so I don't get in trouble. All right. And if you have this guy as your main point of view character, and the entire book is beating the reader over the head about how he hates the Portuguese, okay, most people are going to read that book and they'll be like, dude, what is up with this author? What is wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? But the way our society is, if you were to do the same thing, but you were doing it against a group that it was okay to hate, like say religious people,
Yeah.
and you just mock them relentlessly, then it's okay. In fact, they'll give you awards for that.
Yeah.
They'll pat you on the head and tell you you're so brave to stand up against the thing that they all said it was okay to stand up against because they don't like it.
Yeah.
You know what, guys? If you want to do that as a writer, I'm not telling you what to do. I mean, you guys can do whatever you want. But honestly, I think the key is here, if you want to write actual compelling human beings and you want to write stories that stick around, then you need to actually tackle that like a grown-up.
Yeah.
You need to actually treat this stuff with respect.
I think you and I are both LDS, and one of the
As are like 75% of authors.
Yes.
It's a bad stereotype.
I know, right? But one of the benefits I think that we've had is that you and I have both served religious missions. Okay. And when you do that, we end up, it's part of the gig. You end up meeting like everybody and their dog.
You meet people who haven't done this. You meet an extremely broad and actual diverse,
Like realistically diverse.
realistic diverse, like massive cross section of humanity.
Yeah. I mean, every religion you can think of, we've had the conversations with them. We've had the religious debates with them.
You see the lowest of the low and the highest of the high that mankind has to offer.
Right, you do. And people in all states, and how all of those various states of well-being and life translate into how they view religion and how religion impacts them. And so, for me, that's an experience that I can draw on and say, oh, okay. I remember meeting a guy, he was that religion, and this is how he acted and how he portrayed things. That was interesting. Or like we have a bunch of friends who are all over the place with religion. In fact, we had dinner. Me, you, Dave Butler, and Chris Rocchio had a dinner a few months ago with a legit
Dominican friar, who is a Knight of the Holy Sepulchre.
Dude was freaking rad.
Well, in fact, so he is now me and Steve's go-to reference guy for anything involving that world. You know what I'm saying? So we don't get stuff wrong.
Yeah, like legit, actual. Oh, here's how it would work in Catholicism.
Well, like Steve's writing Vatican Combat Exorcist for the next Monster Hunter Files anthology, as he did in the last one. Very, very popular characters. This is our go-to guy for the dude. Okay, so doctrinally, if we say this, this, and this, is that? No, you'd actually say this, this, and this.
Right.
But sometimes it's not just doctrine. It's like, well, no, culturally, that's not right. You know.
Well, and in Catholicism, the culture of Catholicism in, say, Europe versus the U.S. versus South America, Central and South America, is radically different.
mentioned Portuguese. Portuguese is different than, going down the street and it's, just regular American Catholics. It's a huge worldwide church. When we write about Judaism, we have both used the same guy as our Jewish reference, Michael Rothman.
Mike.
Yeah. So one of Steve's co-authors, Steve has written New Arcadia with Mike and Michael Rothman, and I've known him for many years. He's a great dude, but he's a devout Jew and very intelligent guy, and so there's been a lot of times like, hey, dude, is this right? Would this guy say this? Would this guy feel this way about this? Does this come off as real to you, or does this come off as fake to you? And so I think the key is you don't have to be a doctrinal expert or anything, but I think you need to at least be a cultural familiarity of anything you're trying to tackle. I think that'd be a reasonable way to put it.
I think so because it's just like anything else. Okay?
Well, except for writing Mormons, you can just make up whatever you want.
Well, apparently.
Yeah, because my 13 wives in their butter churning dresses.
Right. Well, in science fiction, okay, science fiction is the genre where it's super vogue to say, oh, well, science fiction, that means that the people there are too smart to believe in religion. It's super condescending. And again, I'm okay if a character or a subset of characters from a specific group believe that way within your novel, but I'm not okay, and I get bugged when it's like one note, like every character in all of your books feels the same way towards religion. Now,
yeah, that's author self-insert.
It is. Now, what's interesting in science fiction specifically, James S. A. Corey, The Expanse.
Oh, they tackled it really well, I thought.
And so it's Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. Ty Frank is an atheist, and yet, especially book. Is it 3 or 4? I think it's 3. Book 3 in that series, which is Abaddon's Gate, is excellent. Or no, it's Caliban's War is number 3. Is excellent because it's all about, like, one of the main characters is a religious. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a priest, basically, a bishop, or so to speak, and her whole character is to discuss the idea of religion in the context of a universe that is expanding and has radically expanded, and it's handled so effectively with respect. It's interesting.
I thought they even did a good job on the TV show.
Oh no, they did a great job.
Because it was interesting to me because typical sci-fi trope is it's the future. We're all smarter, so we don't have religion anymore.
Which is idiotic.
Which that's not really how human nature works.
No.
Because mankind has never been one unified monoculture. And as it gets bigger and wider and more spread out, it is extra not going to be one unified monoculture that all happens to believe the same thing as the author. Unless they do have a subculture that's the bad guys. They believe different than the author.
Yeah.
See, that's just ham-fisted. And the thing I liked about the Expanse's world building was you had the three main factions, but you had all the different sub-factions within them. You had religious people, you had irreligious people, you had atheists,
Well,
you had
again, the
mutants.
the the group that's going to go out on a giant space colonization mission. It's the Mormons.
Which actually is pretty
And it's
realistic.
like, yeah, okay.
There's been all this stuff in the news lately, like Mormons have so much money. It's like, yeah, we're really good with this. If you guys notice the thing, we notice half of us are writers, the other half are accountants, and some of us are both.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. We're all saving up to build that really big spaceship.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
that space where like us and Jewish folk, like we give each other the fist bump of
we fist bump.
fiscal like
What is this so
conservativeness.
weird to people? So what is this so weird to people that like, wow, you mean the religion that preaches fiscal responsibility all the time is fiscally responsible? Weird. Whatever, dude. Okay, like I said, I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for this episode, but we do need to take a commercial break.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I feel like we've discussed this part really well. So I want to get into then taking religion, creating it, and then taking it into your created worlds. We'll be right back.
Hello, word mercenaries. This is Thomas Umstadt, host of the Novel Marketing Podcast. I'm excited to announce the first ever Novel Marketing Conference in Austin, Texas on January 26th and 27th, 2024. This conference is for published authors who want to sell more books and for first-time authors with their first book launching in 2024. This is not a typical writers' conference where you learn how to write and publish books. The 2024 Novel Marketing Conference is focused on helping you sell more books while spending less time and less money on marketing. Our goal is for 2024 to be your best year ever for book sales. To learn more, go to novelmarketingconference.com. That's novelmarketingconference.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so we talked about real world stuff, how you can bring it in, some of the major pitfalls to avoid, which I think can be condensed down to
Don't be a dick.
yeah, don't be a dick. And like, if you yourself have religious preconceived notions, either for or against, perhaps making all of your characters sound just like you, the author,
Yeah.
not the best of ideas.
Because that actually goes both ways. Because we talked about people being like Stephen King and thinking all religious people are stupid idiots. And then I imagine I haven't seen this book, but I imagine it could be done the other way too, where you
like Left Behind, right? That was one of the
oh
big
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
right?
I forget about that particular subgenre.
There is the subgenre of like super Christian fiction,
Yeah.
which I can't read.
I have no knowledge of that genre whatsoever. So
I tried.
I got nothing.
I tried, and I can't because it's the same thing.
It's just the same thing but different.
Yeah, it's just the opposite side of that similar coin.
I think the best way to do it, honestly, is just have a diversity of characters who believe different things, and then be faithful to that writing that character in a way that they would realistically act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. As long as the reader goes, yeah, that given what I know about this character, this is how they would act.
We notice like most of the cast of MHI isn't particularly religious,
Yeah.
but they have a handful of guys who are extremely religious,
Mhm.
and I try to play that up.
Yeah.
Tripp is probably the most religious guy in the whole thing, and he's a Baptist, and I'm not Baptist, but I knew enough Baptists to write a believable Baptist, and he's a good dude, and I made him a good dude who sticks to he's got his moral code and he sticks to it.
Well, or in the Monster Hunter Files story that I wrote, yeah, they're deeply religious.
Well, they're exceedingly Catholic.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
are.
these guys are like hardcore.
Yeah, they would have been giving people some high fives during the Inquisition.
I mean, and the thing is, we treated all this with respect, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key.
Yep. Now, putting that part aside, and heck, we haven't even touched like historical fiction where it's almost a requirement to have religion in it. But let's talk about secondary world fantasy. Okay? Or you could have separate universe, like not our universe, science fiction. Okay? So, and you've done this, we've done this, and this is we need to make religion in this world. because
done this a few times. Yeah.
because it is eh, humans are humans. They want to believe in something. A lot of humans want to believe in something more than themselves.
Yeah. That is a very fundamental, and even the most irreligious people, hardcore atheist people I know are also still religious. Only it's not God, it's something else. So
Yeah.
not to get too preachy on it, but I see a lot of evangelical atheists here.
Yeah.
Well,
they
and Satan is climate change, or whatever
Whatever.
it may be.
but
Karl Marx is God. I don't know. But moving on.
but they have people as in general, and especially if you're talking like different races and like alien type races or different fantasy creature, whatever races, integrating a religion with them is such a one. I personally feel that it's a potentially fundamental piece of your world building, but it's also a really great way and a great tool for you to have in your tool belt for adding flavor to characters, making it frankly kind of easy on yourself. Like, okay, well, how does my weird cat person in this fantasy world, what do they believe? Well, if they have a weird cat god, well, that's going to shape the way they think about things. And that's interesting.
It is. It's such a big chunk of our real world building. Because even if you are today completely atheistic or whatever, the society that we dwell in was built on a lot of the fundamental beliefs and principles, even down to our language and our idioms and so on and so forth. So even if you're like,
Well, our swearing that we talked about in the profanity
yeah, in our
episode.
profanity episode, that's one of the 3 types of swearing was religious based, blasphemy. I mean, we see somebody, hey, get off the cross, get off your cross. I mean, everybody knows what that means, even if they're not a Christian, so on and so forth. I mean, even to the point where people talk about karma.
Yeah.
Christians talk about karma.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's all these different things that come from people's religious background. So even if you don't believe it, it is part of our world building. So it's going to be part of other people's world building too.
Correct.
And so you think about it, it's such a great opportunity to build your own idioms and build your own bits of language and build your own myth. And
Yes.
everybody had a creation legend.
gosh.
Every culture has where man came from. How did we get here?
Well, and in fantasy especially, we get to play in some of my favorite fantasy novels use the idea of god or gods in a very literal, impactful sense.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to hit this really. If you're doing fantasy, I mean, you could have where the gods are a background thing that aren't actually there, or you could have straight up where they get involved. It's your fantasy world. You can do that.
And so Steven Erikson. At this point, everyone knows how much I love Steven Erikson.
Steve's a huge Steven Erikson fan.
Yeah, I mean, his name is Steve. It's hard not to go wrong.
He loves all the Steves.
I do. So he.
After on the episode, I bagged on Stephen King.
That's true. He spells it with a PH. It's bad.
Yeah, that guy.
Stephen.
It's all the cocaine.
I know. I kind of want to have bring up the Chihuahua with like the super underbite. It says Stephen with a PH. Anyway, so moving on. In the Malazan Book of the Fallen, that 10-book series, the gods are like, they're legit. They've been around. A lot of them are dead, but they have such real impact in terms of religion, what people do and don't believe, the conflicts that they have against each other based on various gods, the magic. And it's one of the very best series that I've read, where the casual swearing that people have in it, it isn't our swearing in a lot of cases, but it's in-world blasphemies based on other people's gods and stuff. And it feels so natural and it feels correct, especially when it comes from, it's like, okay, well, the soldier swears this way. The philosopher swears that way. The dairy maid or whatever swears this other way.
Dairy maid swears the most.
And it's really interesting, but none of that would have existed. And I would say that if you took all of the religion and the worship of gods and such out of the Mollison Book of the Fallen, that series would suck. It would suck, and it would feel hollow.
Yeah, it's a huge fundamental part of the building blocks of that world. Yeah, I think that's
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Saga of the Forgotten Warrior. Religion's massive in it.
which is really funny since it's illegal and banned the whole time, and they have almost no doctrine because it's all been scrubbed.
Right. But that's part of the.
Well, it's part of the fun.
That's part of the fun,
I wanted to experiment with that idea.
Okay.
You know?
So how did you approach creating religion in that?
So basically what I did is I started, because for those of you that have read the series, I don't want to like spoiler alerts for the rest, but there's a lot of clues to what's really going on here, and the fact that these people did have the same religions that we have today.
Yeah.
So this is clearly someplace else, sometime that is not here, but there obviously were Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists and even Christians. There's little hints that this stuff existed in the past. Then it all got scrubbed, and I go into the book and how that happens. This is over 1,000 years all this has gone on, and what I did was I wanted to do a fantasy society that was that, John Lennon's Imagine There's, all that crap. Oh, I gave you that John Lennon world, and it ain't pretty. So they scrubbed all this stuff basically, and they replaced religion with an all-consuming law. The law says this, and so the law runs everything. Everybody abides the law, to the point now where the law is the religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I straight up have an inquisition.
Yep.
That literally they are called the Inquisition. And what are they doing? They're getting rid of the religious stuff, not because it goes against whatever the religion is, because they don't have a religion, but it goes against the law.
Well, it's
the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you dropped, and I always make this comparison when I'm selling your book to people, so to speak, either literally or figuratively, and that's if you took Judge Dredd and dropped him in a fantasy world and said, "Bro, you're in charge of enforcing the Inquisition," well, that's what Judge Dredd is going to do with extreme prejudice.
Ashok and Judge Dredd are very much.
They give each other a nice fist bump before trying to shoot each other.
They are very like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I wanted to play on all those religious tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, I'm also reintroducing religion, basically the illegal rebel fanatics. Mm-hmm. Problem is they haven't had doctrine handed down to them. They're kind of making it up as they go. And I'm having a lot of fun with that because they will argue and they don't know what they believe. And so basically like one guy will take charge and say, well, I think it's this. Okay. And he tells the best story. And so they're trying to piece together the past. And actually, and what happens too as this story goes on is the reader actually pieces together the past. But the reader, with our modern mindset where we read a lot of fantasy novels and science fiction novels, the interpretation we come away with is dramatically different than what the characters come away with. So whereas a modern reader will see this and go, okay, gee, that sounds like, quantum nanotech. This is a miracle from the gods to these people. And the gods are characters. The gods are involved. But are they gods that, to these people, they're gods. But to us, they're something else. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And so this was an epic fantasy where I kind of wanted to turn that on its head and have a religious epic fantasy where religion was actually not a foundational part of it. It was it was part of the foundation that got dug up.
Yeah.
And now they're putting a roof on it.
So I remember when we decided to scrub the serial numbers from our old book, our old outline.
Oh, for Servants of War?
And turn it into Servants of War.
Yeah, we had some fun with religious world building.
One of the first things that we discussed was, okay, now that we can kind of do what we want, what do we want our religion to be?
Okay, so on this one, we were a little different. So what we did is, this is a fantasy world. This is not Earth. But we did establish early on in the book that this world is connected to Earth.
Yes.
This is basically the fairy world. This is the world where fairy tale stuff comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And so we established it is connected to Earth. That fairy tale stuff would wander over to Earth and then wander back. Sometimes man would wander from Earth into this world and get stuck. There was no way back for us. Yes. They would wander through the mists, if you will. So what we did is we actually took that this fantasy world had its own religion. It has its own cosmography that we built, which is actually really interesting. But what happened is the other cultures that came over,
they have theirs too.
So we actually have a religiously diverse world. And we actually had one of the 12 tribes of Israel.
That's correct.
Got lost in the mists and wound up in this world.
Well, and one of the earliest things that we talked about, because for those of you who've read the book, we have the fundamental overriding God principle of this world is the idea of three sisters.
Yeah, the three sisters were the ones that were there first.
That were there first. And we state in the book that they're obviously not the only ones. But over this world, they're basically there first. And I remember when we had this initial conversation, I said, okay, Larry, hear me out. What if, which is usually how all of our conversations go. I said, what if these sisters, it's like Cain and Abel, but two of them get together and gang up on the third and kill her, just like Cain and Abel. But then after the fact, they're like, well, shoot, now we don't have someone to vent our frustrations against. So then they go to war. Well, that's the genesis of this everlasting war that's basically been going on.
What we've got is these three sisters each had their children in this world. Well, then mankind came in and we were the new hotness.
Yeah.
We were the new exciting thing.
Well, I mean, hard not to. Super sexy.
And they kind of forgot about the old ones. Yeah. They kind of dismissed their elder children. They were no longer fun to play with. And so each sister kind of adopted a tribe of humans that had wandered through. And yeah, we had some fun with that. So we had basically, and some of those were, we'll never nail down the exact years.
No.
But some of those were Christians. And so they do have basic early Christian beliefs to some of these. But what's happened is that's kind of gotten rolled in with the bizarre pagan stuff that's going on.
Well, and I mean, time works differently there.
Very differently.
And
we established that pretty hardcore in the book.
But and this is one of the fun things, right? Where we talked about this towards the top of the episode, where there's the idea of creating a brand new, fresh religion, and then there's you can take pieces of religions that we understand that can give your readers like something familiar, a cultural touchstone that they can kind of latch onto and go, oh yeah, I get what you're doing here. This is like that. And you can mix and match. And we had a really, really good time doing that in book one. And that's going to continue in book two, obviously.
Well, and then we even took it where there was, so in one of the one nation that we've really seen so far, the one that we've visited some other ones, but the one that's taken place in, as a very tyrannical regime. Like our characters are in the army, but they are not the army of good guys.
No.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah, there's no real good guys.
There's no real good guy here. But they have a state mandated church. They have a state religion.
The Tsarist communion.
The Tsarist communion. And the thing is, it's actually kind of a weird conglomeration of the Christian stuff that came over.
Some Catholicism.
Actually kind of Orthodox. Pseudo-Orthodox.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of this weird pagan stuff. But kind of keeping it on and then there are some people who still worship the third sister, the dead sister.
Yes.
And that actually gets really important because you can't really kill something that doesn't die.
Yeah, because I mean, only a god can kill a god, right? And so it's really fun to play with. And I look back at Servants of War and think about this as I'm talking, Larry. If we were to go in and strip out any religion from it, think about what that would do to our book. One, it would completely eradicate one character. Amos wouldn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Which would be a detriment to the series.
Because Amos is our he's not really a rabbi per se anymore.
Not anymore, but he is. I mean, that's what he was.
Yeah, that's what he was. And Amos is a great character. And he's actually the most theologically grounded person in there with a coherent philosophy, and everybody else is like, I mean, we actually have a great bit in the book where there's they have like the commissar comes in and gives them a big political speech, but then the priest comes in and gives them a sermon, and they're basically the same thing.
Yeah.
They're the same message.
Yeah.
Because it's a state church. But Amos is actually a truly devout religious man who's trying to do the right thing, even though his sins of his past have made it so that he can't really ever be okay with what he's done.
Yes.
And so he's a great character. I love Amos. And so this book, I think what we did here is if we were to strip out the religious elements, and all it would leave us would be like a trench warfare fantasy.
Yeah. It'd be a little bit soulless and spiritless, I think.
But, I mean, it would still be action, and it would still be cool, and we still have a good war story,
Sure.
but it would lose its heart.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, even like another of the major characters, Natalia.
Religion is massive. For her.
She is an extremely religious character. Only like her people are basically
They're gypsies, nomads.
yeah, they're descended from a basically a nomadic tribe that wander through. They're caravan people.
Yeah.
But their religion is kind of what we did with theirs. There's actually a pseudo kind of Greek slash Hindu combination that they wound up with. Where basically her like totem goddess is Artemis.
Yeah.
You know, straight up. And
Well, and then
I love Natalia.
Alarion. I mean, his whole guilt is revolves around he didn't believe in religion hard enough.
No, he wasn't faithful to the state
He
church
wasn't
like he was
faithful.
supposed to. He didn't go enlist like he was supposed to when he turned 18, which is mandatory because he lived out in the middle of nowhere. Horrible things happened to his village.
That's not a spoiler. That's literally
This is
chapter
literally
one.
chapter 1. But then one of the three sisters, who we had a lot of fun with, because we basically took the Baba Yaga.
Yep.
And I'm not talking John Wick. I'm talking old school.
Yeah.
We took the Baba Yaga, complete with house on chicken legs. Yeah. She is one of the three sisters, and she takes great interest in Ilarion. And this is why I teamed up with Steve, the horror author.
Yeah.
Because she is creepy as hell.
Yeah.
And so basically, this guy has been straight up picked to be a champion of basically the old goddess of the woods.
Yeah.
The old dark goddess of the woods.
But as you can see, again, it's a tool. Okay. If you want to add an extra dimension and you feel that it would fit and it would fit your story and make it better, then do it. Think about all the different ramifications that religion has on things, and look at our world's history. What has religion impacted in Earth's history? Well, things like immigration, war for sure, economics. I mean, it literally impacts everything. And so in a prior episode, when we were talking about world building, we often bring up like, oh, okay, well, you need to think about how economics impact your world, how different things happen.
There's so many different
Same thing
ways
with religion.
to tackle this. It's interesting because there's not really a right or wrong answer. You could have a book where every single character, a fantasy novel in a fantasy world where every single character just doesn't give a crap about religion. It'd be fine. It's just not part of the character's life. And it could be a background thing. It could be a thing he laughs at and thinks is superstitious. It doesn't matter. Or you could straight up go Forgotten Realms, where the gods have stats, and each one has a very clearly delineated little, hi, I'm the god of murder. Gee, I wonder if he's a bad guy.
Yeah. And then his father shows up. I'm the paladin of the god of murder. Nice to meet you.
Wow. Okay.
It's like, oh, I'm yeah. I mean, the black armor with horns and blood dripping from it was kind of a giveaway.
Though I do laugh at people playing Baldur's Gate 3 right now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, do not speak to me of the old ways, witch. I was there for episode 1 and 2.
Oh,
and the expansions.
in the good old days. Oh, Black Isle Studios.
I actually played a Forgotten Realms campaign in college too.
Really?
Yeah. Those in specifically in Baldur's Gate before the video game.
Oh,
Yes, actually in the city, because we had a source book, if I recall correctly.
interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It's like pseudo Spain, really, more than anything, before the video game came along and they changed it. But I digress.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can go all sorts of different ways. I mean, they straight up that's a pantheon system with very clearly delineated rules. But then again, most people now aren't writing. We're not tending to write fantasy now where you can straight up put your character on the alignment graph.
No.
Ergo, I'm chaotic neutral, so I have to worship, Bob, god of sandwiches, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Right. Powerful god. Yeah. Underrated.
But you could do whatever. I mean, you could literally do whatever with this. You can go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have religion in your books, but it is a super valuable tool.
I think so. when you guys gotta understand, and you can't see this because obviously it's audio only, but where we sit, in my office, the way I face is I'm looking at like this wall of fantasy and science fiction novels behind Larry. And I'm looking up there and I'm like, oh, okay, we got James S.A. Corey. Yep, there's religion in there. Joe Abercrombie, there's some religion in there, although it's actually much lighter.
Yeah, actually, because on Abercrombie, I would say it's definitely it's a thing that exists and people have it.
But the main characters typically, that's not their bag.
No.
But it's handled well, especially in the first Law trilogy.
Mark Lawrence.
Yeah, he's right up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, I'm not even facing that direction. I just guessed.
Yeah, he's actually right next to your books.
I like Mark Lawrence.
Yeah,
stuff.
Mark Lawrence is excellent, and religion
does play a part
in there. Terry Brooks, of course, is right under there. Stephen Erickson is right under there. Brandon Sanderson is over there.
I'm facing the opposite direction, and behind me, behind Steve, is his games.
Oh yeah,
and he very specifically has the Lord of the Rings.
I do, the Lord of the Rings card game.
Which Lord of the Rings is actually a profoundly
incredibly
religious thing, which is funny because these people who don't really understand religion come along. Oh no, it's not. And it's like, dude,
it's profoundly religious.
It is profoundly religious a lot. Well, then you got above that Dresden Files.
I do, yeah.
which is an interesting one because Dresden Files is going back to contemporary stuff. Probably one of the best examples of really so not the main character, but having a really profoundly super religious character.
Dude, and Michael is such
Michael Carpenter.
Good character.
Fantastic, wonderful character on so many levels. And
to be honest with you, might be because he's not a main character.
No, he's a secondary character. But
might be one of my favorite secondary characters in all of fiction.
Yeah, and I think that's actually fair and accurate.
Super awesome.
Profoundly, deeply religious man, true to his beliefs.
But see, he handles religion much in a similar way that you do in your Monster Hunter series. It's like, it ain't just one thing, folks. Yeah. Like, there's lots of things, and they're all kind of coming at each other.
Because I am actually way more religious than my main character in that. Then it's funny because you know who the most religious person is in the entire Monster Hunter universe is Agent Franks.
Kind of by default.
By default.
He has no choice.
We aren't going to get into spoilers for that because he's also probably like the meanest person in the universe. But that dude, there's no question of faith with Agent Franks.
Well, it's not faith at that point.
He's met everybody.
Yeah, faith is not knowing
and fought with them. So there's a lot of different ways I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but I think the key is it is a super valuable tool in the toolbox if used correctly.
Yes.
If used in a way, and I hesitate to even use the word correctly because we can come up with so many different ways.
If employed with skill.
If employed with skill. However that may be.
Yeah.
And I think anytime you go too extreme one way or the other, bagging on it or saying everybody who isn't on board with it
is dumb too.
And unless you're writing for, like, if you're writing, like you said, you're writing Christian genre fiction, that obviously you're going to turn that knob up to 11, break it off, right?
Sure.
If, like, Deseret Books is a Mormon bookstore chain, Larry Correia novels are not carried in Deseret Books.
No. Oh, I mean, back in the day they would have been. But
so there's no way.
No.
But the thing is, it doesn't really matter as long as you do it skillfully for what you're trying to create.
Yeah, and I always default to the position of what do your characters believe? Not what you believe. What do your characters believe?
Yeah, so if you're going to write Christians and you're going to write devout Christians, and you can have them be good, you can have them be bad, because humans are diverse and we're all over the board. Some of us are good, some of us are bad. You know what? If you're going to do that, do enough research into that denomination to at least get it so that if somebody from that reads it and goes, okay, these people still feel human to me. Mm-hmm. They feel like I said, that's the greatest praise I can get as a writer. If somebody says, your characters feel like somebody I could meet and stand in line at the grocery store. Yeah. And they feel like humans.
Or it's like, oh yeah, that feels like the guy I grew up with.
Right. Same thing. So if you're writing a Buddhist, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. If it's a Zoroastrian, I don't care. But
or the Link's god of I don't know, some random
Yeah.
some random fantasy or science fiction religion,
Yeah,
right?
it's like, you know, priest of Dagon, okay,
Yeah.
and they want to sacrifice you to the fish people.
Yeah.
You know, okay. So to be fair though, now if you are writing someone who's literally like, "Hi, I worship the god of evil," it's like, well, I mean, to be fair, you could go all in on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean that's you
don't really have to
fiction, right?
You really don't have. You're getting at that point. You don't have to worry about nuance anymore. It's like, "Hi, I'm here to sacrifice the babies." It's like, well, right this way, sir.
Yeah.
Nuance is out the window, guys. Don't worry about that guy.
Yeah. All right. So to end our episode, I just want us to throw out a couple good, whether we're talking shows or books or whatever, a couple good references for people that can give people, our listeners, a pretty good idea where we think religion was pulled off in an interesting way, where it felt real. One of the ones I want to mention is, and I've talked about this show before, I believe. It's called Midnight Mass. It's on Netflix. So it's definitely horror, slow burn horror, super, super excellent. But the entire show revolves around religion. Now, when you start watching it, you're going to think, wow, this feels really anti-religious. I promise you it's not. It's, by the end of it, you're going, okay, I can see why a person would go down that route. And it's so varied. It's so varied.
We didn't even
excellent.
We didn't even hit on the potential religious themes.
Oh no, that's a different episode. But
true. I mean, there's so many that you can play, like redemption and repentance, and that's powerful stuff for fiction.
Yes. In fact, we might have to just do a part 2 episode later on where we talk about what religious themes there are and how to employ them as far as like character and world building. Yeah, and then we'll just do a separate episode on that. Anyway. Any stories or shows that you can think of where you're like, dude, that religion was pulled off pretty cool?
Not off the top of my head. I'm not one's not leaping towards me. But
I mean, we did talk about The Expanse earlier.
I thought they did it for sci-fi. I thought they did a fantastic job. Well, it's kind of the opposite of Star Trek. You know, where Star Trek it was always very clean and antiseptic. Well, here in the future, we're not so dumb to believe such dumb crap anymore.
Yeah.
And then they'd go to like the backwards alien planet where they worship the sun.
We cannot. The Prime Directive prevents us from going down and telling these religious fanatics down here that they're stupid.
Yeah, so I actually thought The Expanse was brilliant in that respect.
Yeah. All right, that's all the time we have for you today. I think we've decided that we'll end up doing a second episode on religion later on down the road, themes and such. I think that's actually a pretty cool idea. So we'll do that. Anyway, that's all the time we have for you today. Hope you guys liked our discussion. This is the Writer Dojo, and we'll see you on the next one.
Writer Dojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nybo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
I have to find a turtle and shove this straw down its nose.
Probably